want to unlock both public and private sources of financing, and that's our main target for this morning. Let me acknowledge Professor Francis Kimaso. Prof, I may want to start with you on your first thought with this, but let me also acknowledge the presence of Jabez Emisa Arthur, who is energy advisor. Jabez, we will come to you as well, probably after Prof. And then we have Robert Sogbeji, also from the Ministry of Energy. So it's important that because we are taking a look at both public and private, it will be key to hear from the resources coming from the public side as well as the private side. Caleb is coming from the Bank of Ghana, and that's important. Nana Amoa is also IES. Richard Boateng, Ministry of Lands and Natural Resources. Gentlemen and ladies, will be relying on you immensely to get our target for this morning. Obing Asamoah actually is coming from the Ministry of Sanitation. So we have quite a number of constraints, and he highlighted some of the macroeconomic constraints. Technical capacity gaps and policy incoherence continue to hold all of us back, in terms of financial investment in this country when it comes to green house emissions. Within this, we are trying to unlock the available financial sources that we use to achieve the transitional framework targets as we have highlighted. Prof, you want to take the first seat? Pair what you heard from Dr. Echampong and your preliminary, please. Do we have the microphone? The other microphone.
I want to know from Doug, what investment-ready interventions can we bring on board so that the youth and the environment can take advantage of that? And through that, we can raise a lot of resources or income for ourselves and for the economy. Thank you.
Look, before you move on, so the resources at the local level, are you looking at both public and private?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Any other preliminary? And Dr. Soboji, you can we? All right. Let me just take the microphone.
Good morning. I was a bit late. I apologize. Yes, that was a very interesting presentation. And anytime I'm to comment between the 2060 and 2070 plan, I get a bit worried. But I'm more aligned to the 2070 plan because that is the one that contains my Honorable Minister's picture. And that is the energy transition plan. Now, the energy transition investment plan, it tried to woo investors into implementing what is in the framework. But I'll play with the money to do a public dialogue with technical experts comparing the documents and, teasing out what is really wrong in terms of technology consideration and what is realistic. Because most of us in the technical field who attest to the fact that we can put as much solar as we can, but we can't have 100% solar in our energy mix. So before this dialogue, I don't know whether IMANI had a one-on-one with the Ministry of Energy. Maybe I think some of the issues would have been explained, and they may not appear here. Some of the challenges, I think some of the numbers I'm seeing with these two documents, maybe comparing other factors. For example, putting a lot of weight on transport. They may have included the cost of electric train and the infrastructure to build electric train, But when you come to the transition framework, we are looking at the energy sector investment. So we are not including what the cost of train will be, but making electricity and the grid available for an electric train to work, for a charging station to be available for you to charge your vehicles. So when you bring your electric vehicle, the grid should not be a problem. What investment must go in there? But the cost of your electric vehicles to replace current fleet of vehicles is not our problem. So we don't know whether that was included in the plan. So that is what Prof was saying, that the details of what entered the plan is still, blurry. But let me highlight a few, projects which are ongoing since we launched the transition framework, where we have the scaling up renewable energy program, 10% by 2030. Currently, our RE penetration is more than 30%. And everybody asks how. Yes, even more than 33%. Yes, of course. Because the issue is, we do the first Renewable Energy Act, and we say not more than 100 megawatts is renewable. But then you meet in the international forum, and they'll tell you Norway is having this percentage of renewable, more than 50%, and they mention countries, and you realize that they are all counting their large hydros. And then they point to Ghana. You don't even have 0.1% of your energy mix being renewable. So what are we telling the world? So you put yourself under unnecessary pressure where you already even have what they already have. So we have to make sure that the law is amended accordingly to match with all the international meetings and committees that we attend. So that they don't say that Ghana does not have RE. We do have RE, but we can do better. So Act 1045 made sure that we did that. So the 10% by 2030 you see is 10% of modern RE, excluding large hydro. So it gives us the target to do more. And currently, we have more than 3.5% of that. And the target is 10%. And we are doing that under the Scaling Up Renewable Energy Program, where there is net metering program for hospitals, schools, security posts. And these projects mature, like they take some time to mature. So the project you are seeing with Bui and Kalio and all this didn't happen in 2-3 years. They were over time and then their implementation coming. So there are projects which are there, which are prepared, and they will mature. And by the time they mature, you see that they come in a flux. So this was just launched in 2022, and we're in 2 years. So I just saying that for us to have more dialogue to identify real gaps, we should dig in deep, meet the leaders of the institutions who are doing these activities, speak to them, and then we can really see the main gaps. I'm encouraging, now one thing, these funding institutions, World Fund institutions, I bet you jump through hooks. And sometimes if you don't take care, you'll be frustrated or you give up. To assess funding, to assess green funding, it's not easy. The various procedures, it can take you 2-3 years, and you are just following small money.
Okay. So maybe an important point you raised, but just a quick one, and I think it goes to the heart of the issue. So how come if you take, let's say, a similar project in Morocco or South Africa, with these same kind of investors, they're able to deploy those projects much more quickly at scale than when it comes to Ghana? We've got those, the challenges that you've highlighted, say, Bui, Kaleo is taking forever and all of that. Thank you.
Now, before you bring in an intermittent RE, before you bring in an intermittent RE, you have to make sure that your grid is ready and your distribution network is ready. These countries that you mentioned have huge base loads. So they can afford to build a 500 megawatt solar plant without any consequence to the grid, having problems. Our grid is just 5,400 megawatts in installed capacity with a peak of 3.8. So before somebody comes and say, I'm doing 400, look at the grid. If the person is coming in with investment with grid upgrade, or maybe BSS, battery storage system, together, then you will see that, okay, you can accept this facility because your grid will not have problem. If you do more than 10% and you don't have spinning reserve, and this power goes out of the grid, the whole country will go off. And you see that South Africa is even having challenges now because they are not considering their base load. They had a lot of coal. And instead of making sure that these coals are maintained and gradually shifted to other clean energy sources, you load the grid with intermittent. And now you leave your coal unmaintained. And then they have serious power crisis 12 hours a day. With the Ghana energy sector, we are so wary of not doing these mistakes. So sometimes when they come in, for example, somebody comes and says, I want to do solar. We tell you, okay, why don't you do hybrid, mini hydro solar, like what is supposed to be done, what is to be done at Poalogo. It gives a firm power that during the day the solar is coming, the hydro will come in and all that. But they want plug and play. Quick money, quick investment, take their money back. When you do that, your monetary policies will be bad. Your energy sector issues will go bad. And then your grid will also go bad. So we have to be careful when we are doing this implementation.
Yeah.
Thank you.
But, Doc, let me also top it up and ask you, I think you highlighted some bit of the challenges when it has to deal with the external sources of funding. With that, the bureaucratic nature of that one, were you referring to the public or the private sources, the external one? The one you said 3 years.
The international ones.
Yes.
The international ones. Because they'll show you that there is money.
Okay.
You bring a project.
And the processes are quite tedious.
Very, very tedious. Very, very tedious. You will give up. Mm-hmm. And then if you look at the quantum of money you are even chasing, you don't even think it is worth that amount of energy.
Yeah.
And so if they are really serious supporting, developing economies to transition, I think they should find a way to make
relaxing
sure
some of these processes.
Some of these things to make sure that once you prove it and everything is okay, let's go into project implementation.
But is it the same at the private investment line, or when it comes to some of these multinational donors, the public side of it? Is it?
With the private investment, sometimes it's the cashback period. Mm. If you don't take care, it will increase tariffs.
Okay.
So because they want short-term, payback.
Okay.
So in order to recoup that money immediately, that means that you have to increase tariff.
Okay.
So that is why even mini grids for island communities, we made it government-led.
Okay.
Because mini grid is expensive. And those island communities, we have over 200 lakeside and island communities in Ghana where they have no power. Yeah. And the policy is to use solar mini grid.
Okay.
But then people say open it up for private sector. Mm-hmm. It will be a fantastic idea. But then they cannot charge PURC tariff because that will not be profitable for that investment if they are supposed to recoup their investment within a short time. So it is government-led. Government, recently we are with Swiss government and then with counterpart funding, we are doing 33 island communities to power them with mini-grid solar. So, but this project started cooking, if I tell you how long...
Years back.
Okay. Years back, 2015, 2016.
I see.
And now we've reached implementation period. So this is how some of these things go. And mini grade for those communities. These are poor communities.
Yeah.
So we cannot charge them more than the PRC rate.
Okay. Before I bring in the other one, so what about domestically too? What have been some of our options? If we know that externally these are the bottlenecks, domestically what options have we been able to explore so far? Or what options are there we can explore?
In fact, domestically, I don't think anybody is coming. All they come is who are projects.
Both government and private?
No, I'm talking of private sector
in domestic.
Yeah, domestic. Who are projects? Panels who I can supply you panels. Like everybody wants to cash in.
Okay.
But bringing source funding, doing joint partnership with government to implement a project,
it's not forthcoming.
It's not forthcoming.
I see.
But I think when it comes to the government side, we are able to provide our counterparts funding to be able to meet, those international funding. But then the international funding, bet you me, is not coming.
Okay. Can we have the microphone to the back, the gentleman in the African wear? Please
Hello.
help us with your name and then, where are you coming from?
Okay, my name is Javishe Misantha. I've been in the energy sector for probably 40 years.
Yes, Mr.
And
Misantha.
my last serious involvement with the energy sector was as the CEO of the Bui project. So let me commend Theo. I think that's an excellent piece of presentation you have done. Congratulations to you and whoever your team is. That's good work. I think that I appreciate your conclusions as well, and I'll want to talk a little bit about that. I'll touch on quite a few things. 4 or 5 things that I have made note of. He talked about the tedious process. Theo talked about the preparation of projects into a portfolio. And he had the risk templates. And we have also talked about stability and the hybrid solution. So let me start with the hybrid solution. I think that, Doc, you are right when you say that there's a need to have the hybrid solution for some of these things. But we have made it a bigger problem than it needs to be, especially for ourselves in Ghana. Now, what we need to understand is that our system here has features that make it easy for people to just plug in their solar. If we will do one thing, that is make a standard arrangement for hybridization, because we have Akosombo, we have Bui, and that was the basis of us doing solar at Bui. That Bui, the hydro plant, is providing the hybrid, but it doesn't have to provide the hybrid only to the Bui solar. It can provide the hybrid service to any other solar in the country. It doesn't have to be even near Bui. So there is a strategy by which you can achieve the hybridization without having each individual putting up a solar provide its own hybrid. You just have a policy framework that Akosombo and the hydros will provide hybridization. This is the regulation. This is how much they provide, how much you pay them for intermittency support. This is how much you pay them for backup supply, and so on and so on. So there's a rate for hybridization service from the hydro plants. And anybody can build the hydro anywhere in the electric, and then they get the service for the fee. I don't know why we have not done it. Part of our problem in this country, as we will, are moving on to the next topic, that is the stability of the policy and strategy and the environment framework for these things. The truth is that we don't think in very long term when we make policies. And we change them in and out as if they were fashion styles. And then you are expecting people to make investment when you are flip-flopping on your policies. We don't think and make long-term decisions. And that is fundamental to this. And whether it's public money or private money, if the environment is not stable, if we are changing our minds left, right, center, whether it's my money from my pocket or it's an investor from outside, he'll be careful about what to do. So the starting point is for us to be clear on what we are doing and how we are doing it, and have it as a stable regime going forward. And then people can begin to have confidence. So, I mean, the other part of it, of that stability thing, everybody knows. I mean, if you are going to bring in investment and then you get your revenue in cedis, then of course the macro is important. And if the macro is flying all over the place, everybody will be careful about bringing his money. And I'm saying this, it doesn't matter whether it's a private money or it's public money or it's outside money or it's inside Ghana money. If you are going to make investments in dollars and then get revenue in cedis, you have to watch this thing. And that is a fact of what it is. And I guess that is the same for everywhere else. So what we can do are the little things that we should do to give stability in the sector for it to go forward. And this is one of the things I'm talking about when we deal with hybridization, for instance. And I agree with Theo again on the question of a portfolio of prepared projects. We don't have, if you had prepared projects, that means we have all accepted that this is a project that has to go forward as the country. But if we don't have that, then somebody just creates a project and tries to convince somebody to go forward with it, and with him the idea dies, or it hasn't been well tested and accepted by everybody. It will be important to have a portfolio of projects that we have prepared, that we know are wise and the direction we want to go. Then it becomes easier to present this. And it's linked to the tedious process of preparation, the tedious process of getting money in. Because if the project hasn't been prepared well, and hasn't crossed the dots, hasn't identified all the risks and what has to be done, whenever you bring in a funding company or a funding entity, it's going to ask for these things. Then you are going to have to be going back and forth as to what you are providing to mitigate all this risk, and what about that, and what about that. It becomes long and tedious. But if you had it prepared properly and in a portfolio, we have thought through it, it becomes easier. So we make the things difficult for ourselves. And until we begin to see that these things are long-term investments and we have to have a stable environment, those things that we can do to fix those, if we don't do them, the rest can never fall in place. That will be my contribution for now. Thank you.
Good. Thank you, Mr. Mzatha. So we have a tall list, and Dr. Theo, I'm going to let you respond to the first three that we've heard so far. But let me acknowledge the presence of the Ministry of Energy. So we've started hearing from them. African Centre for Energy Policy, Public Utility Regulatory Commission, the Bank of Ghana, UPSA Law School, Ministry of Sanitation, Institute of Energy Security, Natural Resources and Governance Institute, the affairs, okay, so the Malaysia High Commission, the Ministry of Lands and Natural Resources, and Legon Center for of International Affairs, and then colleagues or media outlets present, also media houses are fully and represented here. So TV3 is here, Joy News is here, Net2 TV is here, Daily Graphic is here, BNFT, the Inside newspaper are all here, making sure that we are able to highlight this important assignment as much as possible. So whether we are not prepared or we haven't been able to prepare ourselves, for instance, to get access to some of the funding from outside, because we heard from Dr. Subwaji that even getting the processes through to source some of these external funding is so difficult. The processes are too much. Is it because we haven't built our capacity well enough to prepare for this? And if we were to prepare well, what difference would that make? Plus some of the comments that came from the earlier speakers. Theo.
Okay, thank you. Let me quickly add on to that. I think the comments that have come through so far really is fantastic, and it goes to the heart of what we want in terms of the dialogue and the conversation. And I fully align with what Prof. Kamaso said earlier, and the need for the clarity in the transition plan. Which one are we sort of going with, and why? And it's related to Dr. Sobaji's point about maybe another sort of session with the two ministries or agencies just to unpack a bit further, how do these two plans talk to each other? But at the moment, when you look at it, and like my own experience, an investor came to me and it's like, ooh, I don't know which is which, and I was left scratching my head. I almost called a colleague at the Deputy Minister for Energy and sent the person there, but eventually they decided to put their money somewhere else, related to this. So I think it's important we do that. The point that the local government raised, I think, is also extremely useful, and it's something we've not captured yet in the report, which is the philanthropy bit of it. Interestingly, we did some study that was published just recently, so it's a peer-reviewed study where we looked at how citizens can crowdfund for renewable energy projects right in the country. And the number of bottlenecks that came through, to the point that some were saying, I'm not sure the reputation of the developer, right? I'm not sure that I'll be making a good enough financial return if I compare it to, say, buying treasury bills or something else, and so forth and so on. So we think, again, crowdfunding, great, there's potential there, but like any other investor, they want a stable return, and they want to be sure that if I give you the money, you're actually going to do the project and not use it for something else. And the bit about the investment readiness and also the renewable energy definition, I think, yes, Doc, you're right on that. Do we include hydro, right, large-scale hydro in our technical definition of renewable energy? When I look at most of the documents that even the Energy Commission, for example, produces, that's a separate line item, right? And maybe we've shot ourselves in the foot, I don't know, but the proposal to amend the law, possibly, but I also think that even if we kept it as is, it's been amended already. Okay, right. Okay, great, yeah. But we still need more investment in the RE space. So, yeah. The tedious processes for assessing the funds and all of that ties into the point that Uncle Jabesh, made, that I think part of the policy work, maybe what the climate desk at Finance Ministry and others should do, really is helping the local entrepreneurs and investors. Sorry, I'll project my voice. So basically, getting the local entrepreneurs to work with them to get the projects, identify the risks, and do all of the necessary background work that is required. So sometimes I sit at some of these investment forums where people come and you'd get, maybe government would take one or two local entrepreneurs, bring them to London or New York or Singapore and all of that. They make the contact, they come back home, the investor starts making the initial inroads, asking for certain paperwork, documentation, and it is now that the person is going to put that document together. The investor is not waiting for you. He's got other things to think about. So I think potentially for me the solution there would be to get, on the policy side, government work with our entrepreneurs, right, to help them with that documentation, the paperwork and all of that, so that you've got something actually to start working with rather than starting the process all over again. But that's some conversation to be had with the ministry. And a lot of the donor assistance that's coming, or technical assistance, could actually go in helping, with the project, improvement or the project screening in that regard. The portfolio approach, I think that would work. But again, with the point that Dr. Sobaji made, if you have a Mazda who is looking at a minimum 300 megawatt type investment, right, in, let's say, a solar facility, and we're also saying that you have these technical constraints where you cannot deploy all of that 300 megawatts, then maybe they may not necessarily be looking at Ghana. Or maybe the conversation ought to be, could we get that 300, a couple of them in Ghana, somewhere, say Cote d'Ivoire, under the regional power pools for them to still export and utilize. But that's a conversation that needs to be had at a technical level. I was just surprised when the guy said, look, they've got 2-point-something billion of capital to deploy, but they can't find a project in Africa. And I was like, whoa, this is a serious issue.
Yeah, that was.
All right, so I'm going to take the next round, and I'm happy that the bank is also here, represented fully by Caleb, and then also Ministry of Natural Resources is here. One of the things that I want us to look at, particularly when it comes to the bank, and this, I think it was highlighted also by Theo earlier. It says commercial banks and financial institutions in Ghana are offering loans, lines of credit, and other financial products to support renewable energy products. How do we tap in from this? There was something that you also mentioned about the fact that even though the donor funds that are coming in have different targets, can we look at the component of entrepreneurship, SMEs, and see how best we can also weave interest around climate issues around them? These ones, plus many more collaborations, regulatory price-driven policies, tax breaks, and feed-in tariffs. If we can look at some of these options as quickly as possible. Bank of Ghana, would you want to start with this round? Caleb. So as the microphone is going to Caleb, so the other thing that is also key is that, and I think Dr. Sogbaji probably hinted on that, how do we also ensure that these sources that we keep going for or we are hoping to reach, we don't end up adding to our debt vulnerabilities? Very important. So as we throw in views and all of that, let's also consider that angle and share. Caleb.
Morning. So concerning that particular aspect about the local banks, the local community, I think when he started talking, I believe I wanted to quickly interject that maybe we've started, I know through 2015, 2017, up until 2019, there's been sustainable banking principles that have been put in place. And then they cover, a number of sectors, I think, the agri sector, the construction, oil and gas, energy as well. I'm certain these are things I know that are being discussed and are being actually put in place, because we found out that the banks are being largely profitable. They have, as of 2019, what I remember, it's about 115 billion. That's what the bank came out that these are all the banks are being able to churn out. So we know that largely they are very profitable. But again, we should know that, as was previously mentioned, no investor at the moment is looking to put in money where they don't know how to get. We've all heard of the non-performing loans and the increments, how they keep increasing. And it's simply because the banks are giving money and people are defaulting. The risk default is too high. So they, in turn, are shooting up their spreads. The premiums are through the roof. No one will take money and be expecting to pay back 41% on them. So basically you're working and then there'll be no profits. Everything you're basically working to get is being shaved away. But that's also because they have to protect themselves. Mm-hmm. So it's a difficult conundrum that we find ourselves. And it's also because I was also looking, when you started discussing, when you were presenting, I didn't hear anything on equity financing. I was wondering, are you solely looking at debt finance? Maybe I might be wrong, but I didn't see anything around that. So, because I think what you've also presented shown that debt financing over the time hasn't really helped us because we keep ending up in a tight spot, keep going back outside for help and, what's it called? Basically help from IMF. So I don't know if we should maybe look probably equity as well.
Okay. Yeah. Institute of Energy Security, Nana is around.
One before you go on. How can we get the interest rates to come down from where you sit, Bank of Ghana, monetary policy? Let me put you on the spot small.
It's current situations. In our immediate term, it will be the pressures on our currency. It will be very unwise to bring the policy rate down. Else, we won't be able to control inflation, and that's one of our main mandates. We have to focus on inflation targeting. So after we've managed to curb that, we can probably have this discussion again, and then we'll see how we go about it.
All right. Institute of Energy Security, I saw Nana somewhere. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Good morning once again. Doc, good work done. But I think that where we find ourselves today, having two inconsistent policies, tells us that civil society organization must be up and doing and be more engaging with government. They won't be coming to us, but I think we must exert some pressure on them to get them out, meeting us and having some of these discussions. The policy is not just to set clear goals. It must also drive investments, ensure energy security and sustainability. It must also encourage economic growth and job creation. And these are very important things that we know to our advantage. So if you have these two key policies signed by the same president, also a minister, you wonder whether they perused the first one before they engineered the second one, and when they were signing, what went through their mind. I'm sure they were paid. Those who sat in the room and did this job were paid accordingly. Can we say this causing financial loss to the state or wasting our time? We must be careful the way we craft our policies. And I think they must engage more frequently. Look, what I find very interesting when it comes to the planned programs along the up to 2060, 2070, I saw something. Hydrogen is far away from us, somewhere around the 2050s, thereabouts. Green hydrogen, look, do you see it? Very far away from us. Meanwhile, today, other countries are producing green hydrogen, and they found technologies to do that. While we are all talking about probably the intermittency of renewables and why it must wait and all that, is that we are so much fixated in putting the energy on the grid. But then when you generate electricity from a green source and the price is good, $4 thereabout to $5, you can convert it to hydrogen. Hydrogens drive cars. Hydrogens used in fuel cell drive cars. Hydrogen, you can convert them to ammonia, fertilizer, and all that. So I think we must also look at that direction as well. But it's a good thing we started today, and we must keep on doing that. Very interesting that tomorrow we are working together with IMANI, ESEP, and others to look at addressing the energy sector challenges and all that. If we don't address this challenge, in fact, we will struggle to introduce more of the green, energy sources. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yes, we have a hand here.
Yeah, my name is Kobna Nyante, a very good friend of Tia Chelfo. Tia, a very great presentation. Thank you for that. And I'm also very grateful for a lot of the comments that has come earlier. So the key challenge that I think we're looking at in Ghana is that over 50% of our energy comes from thermal sources, which means that Every month we are buying fuel, and the sad part is that we need to collect all our revenues in the local currency, both for repayment of the infrastructure, that is the thermal plants, and also to pay for the fuel that we import to power our thermal plants. Luckily, we have some gas, but we still have to import a lot of fuel. So when you look at it from this perspective, it is very, very important that we follow a path for the energy transition. Now, when with the energy transition, we're looking at two clear sectors, right? The public and then the private. On the private, you can see the challenges that my good friend here mentioned earlier in terms of the government having challenges in meeting all the necessary demands or requirements for building these solar plants or renewable energy plants. So the source of funding becomes very important, right? And so when you look at the Bui Dam, for instance, and you look at how the solar project is being executed at the Bui Dam, you look at the fact that you had an investor that was ready to take a huge risk in terms of putting in the infrastructure. So, these are usually not investments that you can easily attract from some of the funding sources that you mentioned earlier, Dr. Teo, you mentioned earlier, right? A lot of these sovereign funds are not going to do what the Chinese are doing, at the Bui Dam. Now, so these are some of the challenges that the government is facing. That you really can't be able to give a sovereign guarantee, and once you're not able to give the sovereign guarantee, a lot of the investments that can come from those funding sources, even in sovereign world, are ruled out. Then when you come to the private sector, a lot of the solar companies in Ghana are quite small. And so the biggest challenge that the private sector, that is the entrepreneurs, are facing is how do you raise money to do project development? So if you're developing anything around 1 megawatt, 2 megawatt, you would need $20,000 US, $30,000 US to develop some of these projects, right? And so where do you get those funding to develop the projects? When you talk to investors, they say, "Oh, bring the project, we'll fund it. Bring the projects, we'll fund it." Now, even if you were to spend the money to develop the projects, and you meet a typical investor, you go to the second problem, which is that the repayment of those systems has to be taken in the local currency, and so you have to repay the investor in the foreign currency. So you're back to the same issue, which is the foreign exchange. And how do you solve the problem? The challenge, the solution to this is, number one, again, even in the private sector, we have to look at concessionary funding for a lot of these solar projects. And then we have to add other sources, which is, can we use the carbon credits that are generated from those sources to go into the pool of funds to stabilize or to reduce the payment or to keep the payment stable, so that we can come out with a solution where a local company can actually do solar, get a lower interest rate than what my good friend at the Bank of Ghana is saying, that those interest rates cannot come down. A lot of the studies that we have done shows that when a company is able to secure or install solar systems and their repayment is around anything around 18% to 22% on the CD, the savings on the solar systems are so huge over the years that they are likely to switch to a renewable source. Now, even the banks are not going to be able to offer anything around 22% right now. So the solutions that we have in the private sector is a combination of using concessionary funding and then carbon credits to ensure that in the private sector, if you take away the banks, we can offer anything around 22% and allow companies to be able to switch to solar energy or other forms of energy. Another key point is that even in offering these solutions, we know that solar systems are intermittent, right? Or most of the renewable energy sources are intermittent. So we need to be able to stabilize the power using batteries. And that means that the type of batteries, the quality of batteries, and the technology that we deploy are hybrid systems. And those hybrid systems are also priced in a way to be able to stabilize the power for the private sector. Now, the thing that we need to be able to look at is that just like my friend is talking about scaling up renewable energy, much of the scaling up renewable energy that is being done by the Ministry of Energy right now is funded by the African Development Bank. Is it possible for us to have some kind of public-private sector partnership to be able to take a lot of the major institutions that consume large forms of energy, like our universities, our colleges, our schools, police barracks, and all those institutions, so that we can migrate them to renewable energy. Now, right now, a lot of those institutions, the bills are actually paid by government, which means that it might, be very helpful to create this public-private sector partnership, where those funds are actually put into some kind of portfolio or an SPV, and then we bring in multiple sources of funding, be it the carbon credits, debt, and then even equity, into that portfolio, and then migrate all those sources, migrate all that load, into that portfolio. That would really move a lot of energy use into renewable energy. Another creative thing is that since when you look at the volumes or the number of electric vehicles that we need to be able to deploy in terms of the energy transition, and a lot of these electric vehicles are revenue generating centers. So if I buy a bus every day, I'm generating revenue, right? So when you look at the pricing and the profit margin that it allows for you to be able to generate by introducing an electric vehicle, it could be greater than what you would get by installing solar energy in a particular institution, right? So the kind of portfolio that we develop can include these kind of metrics, where you have some of those off-takers having a higher profit margin to cushion that whole portfolio, and then some of those off-takers also even having some kind of lower margins to be able to balance out the whole portfolio. I think that when we follow this path, the private sector can play a very strong role in the energy transition, and that we will be able to reach our goals in terms of net zero, be it whether the target is 2060 or 2070. And then, but most importantly, we solve this problem that we have in Ghana, where every month we are importing fuel, huge volumes of fuel, to power our thermal sources and also to fuel our vehicles. Thank you very much.
Good. Thank you. So, if I'm not... Okay, I'm seeing a hand there. Can we take that one? And then, Prof, I would want to take your your views on the fact of migrating the large consumers like institutions to RE after that.
Okay, so hello. My name is Richard Boate. I'm from Ministry of Lands. So I think all that we say in the presentation that Doc did, I think it's a very nice one. It's okay. But my problem is, at the end of the day, we do a lot of these gatherings and then we discuss stuff that you see that, yeah, these are very good things that we can do. But then the willingness to even execute it is the problem. That is what I think. So when Uncle Jabez talked about policies, I was like, yeah, that is it. There are a lot of things that we are even doing now in the country that people see, yeah, this is a very good initiative. But it will shock you that there are no policies even backing them. So there is a high possibility that government will change and then the next government that will come will say that, no, I don't even need this. But it's a good thing. There is no policy backing it. Even the country that we are in now, NDPC will tell you that, oh, we have a development agenda. But the truth is there is no development agenda. The development is being tailored alongside the manifesto of the government of the day. That's what they are doing. But they will tell us that there is a policy for development of the nation, which is not true. So the reason why I'm saying it's a policy, so what we are doing now, I think it's one, it's an issue with government, and then two, policy. Because we might develop the policy and then you might see that, yeah, this is a very good policy that will help the nation. We will implement it, but you'll be shocked that we will not even monitor it. There are things that we've done here in this country, as a country we've done, and then, okay, this is it. Where I'm coming from, we will say that we want data-driven or evidence-based decision-making. So that's what we do. Here is the case, people that are even going to monitor the thing will come and give you wrong figures. And then you work with those wrong figures. So investors come in and then you show them that, oh, this is what we have. They might also go to the field and see that there's a difference between what you're seeing and then what they are seeing. So in this case, you don't expect them to come and put money into something that... And then sometimes you hear things that we are doing in the country and you go like, are we sure? The amount of dollars that we put in something, and then you say that no, US will not even put such an amount into this. But then that's what we're doing. And then there are times that donor partners have given us money to do things that I don't want to cite examples because for obvious reasons I can't do that. And then they will give you money to do things, and then they come and then they say that are you sure you took this money and then you did this? Maybe you want to procure Belacqua for everyone here. And then they come, there are bottles that are sealed, but then they are empty. There are ones that have filled and stuff like that. Meanwhile, you said we were going to fill all bottles. You see, so this is how come we are... Yeah, because people... And what we are talking about, solar is very expensive. So we can even start from government agencies. All government institutions must use solar because we are the ones that are even using electricity and we are not paying on time. Yeah, so the issue has to do with policy.
Okay.
We should be okay.
So whether we are policy prepared and all of that, we have a hand here, please. We'll come back to some of the issues you have raised from local. Is it local government? The Ministry of Lands. Okay.
So I wanted to know. Just recently, the Africa Development Bank has launched the Africa Energy Bank to be able to move hydrocarbon investment. How do we balance these two issues of just transition and energy transition for Ghana and Africa at large? Yes.
So for you think we are not even prepared to energy transition?
No, not at all.
Okay.
And that's the Africa position. When they go to COP, they don't argue energy transition. Rather, it's just transition.
Mm-hmm. But you see that from the Ghana perspective as well?
Yes.
You see that from the Ghana perspective?
Yes, as well.
Okay. Doc, would you like to take all these responses real quick? Yeah.
Just quick responses, and again, yeah, really, really fantastic inputs from everyone. And my brother Richard's point hit home quite well, the evidence-based policy. So, one of the presidential candidates says that they're going to deploy 2 gigawatts, 2,000 megawatts of solar onto the grid within the 4 years that is available to them. And if you assume that you have 5 gigawatt capacity, that's almost what? 40 or so %, isn't it? And the question some of us are asking, back to Dr. Sobaji's point, is it actually technically possible to deploy 2 gigawatts within 4 years. So that's 500 megawatts almost every year. The costs are not falling fast enough to actually allow you to deploy it, at scale in that context. And the biggest thing being the cost of the electrolyzers that you need to actually produce the hydrogen. I even think that there's potential within our plan for the heavy industries, so steel, aluminum, and all of that, possibly maybe to do 1 or 2 demonstration projects on the possibility of using hydrogen but it will be fairly minimal and not on the scales that we're looking at. Again, I would argue, I could be wrong here, but if we have hydrogen and we're going to produce, let's convert it rather into fertilizer and use that for agriculture and feed our people with that in that context. And yeah, I mean, a number of points made by Kobna as well, which have very much aligned with, so more concessionary funding. The carbon credit is a very interesting one. It's come up strongly in a lot of the conversations that myself have been privy to. And it's interesting that companies outside now actually are even buying up land in Africa to sell the credits. But this time around, it's not even companies, governments, sovereigns. So you read the news, you can Google, UAE, Qatar, and all of that. They're using the sovereign state to actually buy land in different African countries, Liberia and a few other places, to trade carbon under the Article 6 rules, right? The voluntary carbon market and all of that. And I think, yes, for the project, if we can estimate the credits and potentially have a market mechanism to sell, then you can recoup that back in and help to reduce the cost of capital. I really agree with those points that you made. And then the PPP thing, I'll leave for Prof to answer, but I think, again, it's possible. So I'm thinking, okay, take Kolebu or the UGMC, right? Is it possible for a private developer to go partner with them and say, okay, I will give you a solar sort of solution or some hybrid solution, and then we'll work on some payment schedule that allows you to then, go off the grid if need be. It wouldn't be 100%, but something with the battery solution included in that, that's something to possibly, explore. The big one on energy transition, just transition, I haven't had a third one. We call it energy progression, right? That this whole conversation is even a non-starter, right? That Africa is only costs 4% of the total emissions. So why are we even talking energy transition when people have survival issues? We need to get energy access and all of that. For me, it's a neither or. It's not a binary debate, because I think if you look at what we say we want to do, like on here on cooking, you've got a baked in there on clean cooking, that you need to deploy those technologies to help people get access to modern energy services. So the question there becomes the how bit. The semantics, sometimes you also have to play the game on the international stage, to be able to get the investments that you need to actually get into your country. So yes, collectively when we go and negotiate, we all shout and say, hey, we want just transition, which is right. But even the just bit, the people that promised 100 billion a year, right? The money hasn't come through, right? So you need to play the geopolitics a little bit at the country level. We are Africa collective, fine. But at the end of the day, you vote for a sovereign government, and the sovereign government is the one that delivers public services in that regard. Yeah.
All right, Prof. On the PPP, you want to whether we can migrate some of the large consumers, the institutions, to the renewable energy?
Before until the last 2 years, when the dollar was a bit stable, it was a very good investment. So Upon Sanifa has some. Regional Maritime University has a model like that, Central University, Cargill, etc. But in the last 2 years, with the I mean, Mr. Nyante just mentioned the exchange rate, etc. Because these are dollar-denominated stuff, right? Because they will import their solar panels, their batteries, inverters, etc. So in the last 2 years, with the way the dollar has been behaving to the cedi, I don't know how profitable those businesses are now, because I'm sure they may have been signed in some monthly dollar payment, right? So now for those pharmaceutical companies, for those universities, how much are they paying in cedi? And is it still profitable? I can't tell for sure. But definitely that's something that we should be able to do. But in doing that, ECG is a very important stakeholder. ECG get a lot of their money from industrial partners. So if you are bringing a lot of these large institutions onto solar or wind or whatever it is, they would have to be brought into the picture. If we were to put all our large industries on solar, for instance, where does ECG get their revenue from? Netco, same thing. Netco, they work in an environment where, their households are very scattered, so a lot of their money would have to come from their industrial partners. So if we are to do this, we need to bring them on board so that it's a win-win for the private sector, and then also for ECG and NETCO, who are distributors. I know that when it comes to the PPP thing, take large hospitals, for instance. Maybe Kolebu or... because traditionally, and maybe Dr. Sogbaji can correct me if I'm wrong, because government pays their electricity bills, or government is supposed to pay, there is no motivation for them to go into these agreements. Because if you go into the agreement, then you would have to be paying, your part of the PPP. Until recently, universities were not paying their electricity bills, but now we are being asked to pay. I come from KNUST, so we've had a lot of meetings now with solar companies trying to see how best we can bring some solar into our system so that our bills would go down. Okay, so it depends on who is paying. Is it government that is paying, or it's those entities that are paying? If they are paying, there's some motivation to want to go into this if it's cheaper compared to buying electricity from ECG. But if government is paying, then you continue using it, whether it's paid or not. That's between government and ECG, which is leading to some of ECG's their problem. So yes, it's possible we can do it, but then it will also depend on who is paying for the power, and then what policies are in place to ensure that large institutions, large government facilities would be motivated enough to want to sign on to some of these things.
Maybe you and maybe Christopher from Local Government Network as well, and then maybe Dr. Sogbaji, you may want to speak to this about the national commitment and commitment from government and all of that. Do you see that we put up enough commitment? Because the Ministry of Local Natural Resources thinks that even in terms of commitment, we are not there. We are not even preparing to deal with this, and so this conversation may not even be a non-starter on the table of. At the national level, I am seeing what he referred to, the National Development Plan, for what they say is meant for the 2057 National Development Plan. And here it says that enhance climate change resilience. That's as straightforward as that. And they say that they leave the rest, the breakdown for political parties and governments and manifestos to deal with it. So at the national level, this is a sort of commitment we get. Do you see this as enough to tackle what we need to handle?
Well, we have the Renewable Energy Master Plan. It's given us a broad framework. It has phased in, power procurement into the system, and then now we have the transition framework, we have the transition plan, there is the updated NDCs as well. So between these, four, and perhaps others, our climate policy, we do have quite a lot already, a very expanded plan. The 2057 may just be repeating if they want to go through all of these. I think there's already those plans that we need to, as to whether we are committed to, because for example, the Renewable Energy Master Plan has some targets. As of this year, we are not meeting those targets. So that's another issue. But I think there's enough detailed plan for us to go by. Yes.
Okay. You agree to that, Chris?
Perfectly. Mm-hmm. I also want to add that when you were telling the attendees, I was expecting to hear some of our guys from the political party at front. Because they are still working on their manifestos, and somebody interestingly asked me that, so these manifesto issues, are they relevant? Because he sees the manifestos as just a rubber stamp, and when they come to power, they don't use them.
Yeah.
Are they in line with the national development plans? So if we sit here, we sit anywhere, and they are not there, we don't sound it to them that it is relevant that all what we are discussing here, they need to factor them. Then we'll be washing at the back of the bottle, not the inside. And at the end of the day, whatever inputs that we are making here might not reach them. So let's try to incorporate some of their inputs. If they are not coming, let's go to them and bring them on board for them to see that, look, this is the way to go. These are the gaps that we have identified, and you and I need to fix them.
I think at the last gathering we had CPP here, but today they didn't show up. Our green businesses as well, particularly the SMEs, those of us who are here, if we can share ideas on some of the difficulties in financing your businesses and all of that. We heard from Caleb earlier regarding our ability to pay back and for which reason some of these monies don't come to us readily. Even at the national level, we have been told that we have difficulties in preparing processes that allow us to source some of these funds outside. So you can also share with us some of your challenges. Yes, I see one.
Hello, thank you very much. So my name is Lavin, and I'm from Solar Taxi. So Solar Taxi is an e-mobility company. We locally assemble 2, 3, 4-wheelers in Ghana, and we've been in operation since 2019. And I really enjoy the conversation around the carbon credit and some of the debt issues in terms of the interest rate. And we personally have impact on that. I will start with a story. We had a financing from a local bank, I think somewhere 2021. And I think then rate was somewhere between 13-15%. Monthly repayment wasn't very heavy then. Was to assemble 1,200 bikes under an AFD program. The bikes came in, we assembled. I think the interest we were supposed to start paying right after the moratorium period was about 3 times what we had initially projected. And to be honest, at some point it became very difficult for us to pay because we were using cash reserves to make this repayment, not revenue generated from the operations. So we had to default, go into negotiations with this financial institution, and we had to depend on our external investors to pay off this debt. And this is me sharing our personal experiences. There are still some financing program locally that we think is good. Some of them is the DBG, Development Bank Ghana. They cap an interest rate of 18% on renewable projects. So it is also financed through a financial institution under their program. So EcoBank, Access Bank, and others are on their program. So that means they would have to have a spread on their risk in addition to the 18%. So that means some of these renewable projects that is currently ongoing in Ghana can also benefit from that. So regardless of where the MPR or what the GR rate is or whatever rate that any bank is giving or offering to its client, these are options that you can explore.
Good.
And one of them is also the carbon credit. We are yet to complete the program, but I think it's been quite beneficial in terms of the process. Recently, we had a conversation with the Singaporean government, even here at Town Palace. And they were sharing with us how they are interested in taking some of the carbon credits we generate as a company through the operationalization of our vehicles. So we have like material experience to some of these things being discussed. And we know that looking at where we are projecting things to be, we may see some benefit coming in from even Green Climate Fund, which has also given funding to EcoBank, under a program to finance green projects in Ghana. So some of these ideas are perfect. Some of these projections and advice that we are actually projecting to government and companies are also good. But based on some of these experiences, we would wish, especially because, to be honest, recently we heard NPR can drop even if inflation is still high.
Yeah.
China did it, and we know we can do it. But because if companies cannot be able to grow and being pushed to the wall like we had with experience with the local financial institution, we might have closed down by now. So we think BOG and some local banks can also find creative ways to go about financing local projects under some of their programs, SANREF and Co, to make these rates very, very, not the way they are now. I mean, it's crazy. Now some GRR rate from banks are somewhere around 38. So even if you are generating 100% profit, operations is, let's say, 40. You are paying almost half of the money to the bank. And they are not very nice people, also, to be very honest. I mean, even when you are struggling, you're trying to explain to them, these are some of the exposures coming from issues at a macro level. They are more interested in their money. You see that when are you paying? They are sending emails, you are following up on your payment.
The pressure.
And then they are charging you every single day with defaulting on your payment.
Yeah.
No negotiations as well. And we know they are also exposed. We understand that. But you are in business because of us. Also, that understanding has to be there. So if you are not able to come to the table and we find a better pathway to that, because some of this impact is not dependent on us. It's literally on macro level issues. Interest rate, inflation rate, and some of these impact, you are paying 3 times what you projected to pay. That's crazy, right? So, I mean, some of these things, when they realize this is where things are going, they need to quickly come back to the table. Let's have the conversation, and then it will actually help. And we have also had very huge interest in terms of foreign financing in Ghana, but as we all know, macro level issues is also hindering us being able to tap some of these funding options. It's just donor funds and people who don't care about the risk, but they just care about the project viability. But most often, people actually do care about the risk. And I mean, for a country with inflation through double digits, most of their part being imported, also currency issues, I mean, that really do have impact on us. So, I mean, this is my submission on this.
Good. Any other business? And I'll be asking Caleb whether there are some options for relaxed measures for some of our green small businesses in particular. Any other?
Hello.
Yes.
My name is Givens. I'm also from Solar Taxi. I think my colleague has spoken a lot on financing aspect. My point is with incentivizing private individuals that venture into the energy transition project. So if the government has taken it upon itself, okay, so by 2060, we want to put Ghana on this level, and individuals in their own capacity come up with ideas or opinion to make this transition possible, I think immediately government and all other institutions should come in and support those individuals. Some of these things we have seen recently where the government introduced the reduced import rates for imported parts, electric vehicle parts. So it makes it easier for an assembler like Solar Taxi to bring in the parts to be able to assemble here. There should be more. We should have some tax incentive. We should have some tax holidays. Because we are actually aligning with the government's project. If a small company like Solar Taxi is being attacked everywhere, whilst they are trying to do the right thing, it discourages the company from doing what they are doing. And then my second point will have to be with what Doc said about if we are transitioning, let's say from fuel vehicles to electric vehicles, our project is to transition. How the people transition is not are concerned. I don't agree. So if somebody is using their fuel vehicles and they are comfortable with it, and you feel they should use electric vehicles because they are greener and they fall into your transition goals, you should motivate them to transition. So if I go to a trotro driver and I say your vehicle is over 10 years old, that is the average vehicle in Ghana, where in Europe 10 years the cap for vehicles to be actually disposed of, but majority of our vehicles are over 10 years old. And you want to tell this driver that now transition to electric vehicle. What is the incentive? What motivation are you giving to the person? Oh, it's greener. They don't care. Yes, they don't care about it being greener. What are they benefiting from it? Okay, so you save more money if you go the electric way, then he's beginning to get interested. Yeah. But then the initial cost, I don't even own this car. Why should I drop it and come and buy your electric vehicle? How are we bridging that gap? What are we doing to motivate the ordinary Ghanaian to dispose of his fuel vehicle and come and buy your electric vehicle? These are conversations that we should go back to the drawing board and then have something that will motivate the ordinary Ghanaian to make the switch to a greener means of transportation. Thank you.
Awesome. Any other? Arusha, I see you, and do I see a hand in the middle there? Sir? Doc, you have a few to respond to. Okay. Do we have any other before Doc responds to some of the things? Okay, good.
Hello, good morning. My name is Joseph from the PURC. And I've heard a lot of comments from everyone here. And everyone seemed to be going contrary to what the goal of this whole thing is about. I feel like we are all saying the truth, but we are all also not looking at the truth. In the sense that the major problem is the microeconomic conditions in the country. We want to import. She was saying import. The more you import, the more you worsen the microeconomic situation of the country. The carbon emission issue, why do we want to transition? What is Ghana's contribution to the global carbon emission situation? I think if it's not 0.2%, then it's around that. So why are we worrying ourselves? Okay, it's good to add clean energy to our system, but what is the cost of that clean energy? We want solar. If we look at currently in the regulated electricity market, the cost of all the power plants we have, including the hydro, solar is one of the most expensive sources of electricity generation. But yes, too, we are saying that why is it expensive? It's because of the financing. You realize that it's cost more. Aside it, even the cost of it, if we put a solar power plant, a solar system in Ghana here, the amount, that particular solar system, the amount of energy that it can amount of energy it can generate would even determine how expensive it's going to be. So we've not actually even gone deeper to understand all of that. Also, I also heard some of us saying that some of these state institutions should actually install solar, right? So at the end of the day, we are saying that, okay, they should install solar. But we've not asked ourselves that at the end of the day, if they install the solar, what is the ripple effect on some of these state-owned institutions like ECG, NEDCO, where they've signed contracts with contracts with these IPPs to generate the energy for them. Considering those customers, those state institutions, other consumers, we are actually advising, let's bring in more solar, let's bring in more of this, but we are not considering all those things. The more we do that, the more ECG becomes more debt held, and then at the end of the day, they also need to go and borrow more. We are increasing worsening our microeconomic situations. I think we need to really look at all these things very well and look at it from that point of view. At the end of the day, I from PRC would always want to look at the investor point of view, the utility point of view, and also the consumer. At the end of the day, if the more you bring in these solar, new renewable energy technologies, the more you increase tariffs to the consumer. When we go home and tariffs have been increased, we'll be crying. But we are all sitting here and we are all pushing. Let's bring you renewable. But when the tariffs go up, we are not in favor of that. So please, that's the little I can add. If there's anything further.
Good. And I would love for Doc to respond to that. I know that.
Just a quick one, so maybe you can add on and
okay.
So you're making the argument that if you bring in more renewables, the cost goes up for the consumer ultimately. Is it peculiar only to Ghana? Because there are other places where people have deployed renewable at scale and the blended cost of power actually has come down. So what could be the issue? Is it the technology or there's something else at play?
As I said, we are all skipping the whole thing, microeconomic variables. How are you going to borrow that money to finance that solar project? And you see, they are saying energy transition. One thing I should have added earlier on was the fact that we all want to transition, but we are forgetting the fact that we need to first be industrialized like the Western world, where they've actually industrialized to a certain stage, where producing those solar panels and all those systems is not that much cost effective to them. It doesn't affect them that much. Ghana here, we are not even producing some. We are depending on them. They'll produce, we'll go and buy at a very high cost. The more we import, the more it worsens our micro conditions, and hence our economy is actually getting into a very much more Western situation by the day.
Okay. So I think I would love for a lot of you to contribute to that, because we want to look at, and he's raised it. I think it even ties into somebody who said that we probably are not even seeing the need for transitioning to renewable energy. We want to look at the cost-benefit analysis, whether we've had that, whether for us at our stage it's cost-effective to be pushing for this. That's how we have to convince PURC, according to him. But so before we get there, and I realize that a lot of hands will be coming from this side, this table, and some at the back there as well, and there. Good. So let me deal with my green businesses, the small businesses. They have serious concerns. Incentives, government incentives, and whether there have been options for relaxed measures coming from either the Bank of Ghana or the commercial banks. Are there incentives, if some of these public institutions can tell us? And if BOG, Caleb, are there some incentives coming from your end? Are you able to relax some of these, your strict measures for our businesses, our small businesses in particular? Who takes first, please? I can spare my microphone. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah. Let's deal with the incentives of the businesses first. Oh, you can take this.
Yeah, every business is looking for profit. And when you look at ECG, that is the mother of our energy sector now, they've taken us for granted in one way or the other. There's no competition. There's no alternative source. So whatever they tell us is what we take. My colleague was talking about bringing them on board as the key stakeholder. Yes, but it's not a matter of we begging them before we bring in solar and other energy sources. It's a matter of looking at what we can do for the economy to grow, for us to enjoy our economy as people. So if we are able to invest in solar and other alternatives, it will really also push them to efficiency. Because if there's some kind of competition and people are moving away from your services, you look up to other opportunities that will attract them to you. And by way of doing that, they will improve upon their efficiency. Those who are coming on board will also see that, look, if we don't do the right thing for the people, they have alternative way to do their things. So they will shift to that venture. So for a businessman to venture in a particular sector, he look at some of these things and move into it. So that is where we stand, by saying that there should be some competition in terms of bringing all these sectors on board. Thank you.
Thank you. The incentives.
Well, I think we spoke about the sustainable banking principles. I think that's what he was touching on concerning certain banks reducing rates, wanting to reduce rates, but that's geared towards certain projects. I mean, I think it falls under that. I don't agree with him saying that. I mean, I think, how to put it? Well, he spoke about how MPR rates could be dropped in certain countries and it's not affecting, even though they might be having inflation. I believe that's how you put it. Yes, so China. I'm glad you used that example. Comparing the Chinese economy to our economy is a bit, it's a bit funny because let's take even Africa as a region. We are debt laden. I mean, there's a lot of debt pressure on us, and unfortunately, it's all in the currency. The green everything is backed against the greenback. I mean, the dollar, and it's costing a lot for us. China can afford to reduce an MPR because I'll tell you that they are largely known to export. Their exports they have a very robust export industry. So reducing their MPR rather serves them because now they reduce their currency, and even we Africa debt laden, we can go there and bring things because it's advantageous for them if they reduce it, and even if they incur a little inflation, they can afford to. However, we can't use the same metric for us because if we try that, that's suicide. We will definitely cripple us. So using China as a metric is, if you had used an African country and then you had said, okay, maybe this is what they are doing here. I can even give an African country that's reducing their results, like Egypt. But Egypt is doing that because they have cut down on their spending, and that's they are reducing their debt, as in they are spending less. If we were doing that, but at the moment our debts are high. Our debts are unsustainable. So even going that route, I'd say unfortunately it's not the best. And that's where the banking principles, the sustainable banking principles are coming, because we have realized that the SMEs need funding, the private entities need funding, or the economy can grow. But situations have become tight in certain areas, and it's making it impossible. Not impossible, but it's making it extremely difficult to go ahead with certain projects. And then I think one comment you made also about the banks needing you basically to survive. I also don't entirely agree with that, because clearly they've shown that they don't need you to survive, because they're surviving. They are being very profitable. They're actually profitable now, as compared to, because it's they are rather buying. They call this. There's a term, lazy banking, where they are rather buying securities, safe securities. So treasury bills, government bonds, precisely, because the ideology is making little profit is better than making no profit. So, in as much as they also have to incentivize you to get it. They also need incentives to give money, and at the moment it's just not there, and it's simply because of the situations we find ourselves in right now. I believe that if we eventually get out of this, which might not be maybe in the next year or two, but if we eventually get out, I think things might slowly normalize. But at the moment, I can't give any, I have no information concerning any light that you at the end of some tunnel for the SMEs. I can't necessarily state. I don't have the authority to give any kind of info like that. But yeah. Sorry.
Okay. Dr. Sogbaji, any other government efforts that have been made to support, incentivize some of our green businesses from where you sit?
Mm-hmm. Tax incentives are very good, but you and I know that they don't translate to the end user getting lower cost of products. And that is how the business climate is in Ghana here. Let's take Belakwa, and let's say Ghana or the government gets a way to give Belakwa solar installations to reduce the electricity bill. I bet you the cost of the bottle will still be the same. So sometimes you ask yourself, why are you pushing for incentives when the end user is supposed to benefit and is not getting the value for government investment? Government would rather use that money somewhere else. When we were doing the net metering pilots program, I'm coming to the issue of we being afraid that our discos, that's our distribution companies, will collapse. We are in energy transition, and every agency or sector must come out with its sustainable plan. So GMPC is coming up with its plan, Petroleum Commission, VRA, every institution is supposed to see this document as a mother document and draw their transition plan from it sustainably. So if you see that you are NPA and you will be going out of business, what is NPA doing? Now they are going to look at ethanol. What is BOSS doing? BOSS is changed to BEST. Instead of bulk oil, it's bulk energy. So it means that they are looking at other energy. That is what ECG should do. So if we are promoting distributed generation, and we say, first we said 1:1, and realized that yes, it was disadvantage to ECG. Now we do 60-40 because of the losses in the transmission. So ECG, you are still getting your electron cost back. But in energy transition, you should be innovative. Let's put aside their so-called technical or commercial losses, which is, I say, based on a lot of serious inefficiencies. So ECG already is making losses based on a lot of inefficiencies. But as you are moving into energy transition, you can decide to invest in battery storage system as grid or distribution grid support to sustain the distribution network, and even justify that you need to do small solar system at distribution nodes just to make sure that you sustain the losses in your distribution network. You have to make sure that this is supported by an airline, because you are not required to do generation, but you have to justify that where we are going, this is what we must do. That is sustainability. So I think the institutions are not looking at planning and making their own sustainable energy transition, but rather looking to government to bring money and say that government is not going to give you money to buy electric vehicle. We'll say tax incentive on commercial vehicle or importation of electric vehicle. What private sector must do is to take advantage of this tax incentive, get a lot of these vehicles in, and do this hire purchase with the church or anybody who is interested in using electric vehicle. This government will do to make sure that you can easily get these cars in and then now do your own business. We have seen that these Uber small cars, there's private sector, they bought a lot of Suzuki small vehicles. How are they able to do that? They were able to do it, and people buy it and pay it on hire purchase. So if there's a tax incentive on electric vehicle, there is the capacity to go into it. If we say we are doing energy, the transport sector can do that. The transport sector look at the energy transition and brought electric vehicle policy. How do we implement it? They may have a master plan of it. So that is what I'm encouraging, that institutions must come up with sustainable energy transition policies or plans to make sure that as we transition, they will survive. Because in our plan, there's a period where there will be a ban of importation of internally combustion engines. You use it as far as you can. Beyond a certain point, you won't get the parts because they are outlawed by law. So we will still be forced to buy electric vehicle. So government will put policies in place for us to transition, whether we like it or not. But make sure that your business will survive the transition. And you have to make plan for it. Thank you.
Good, but I'll stay with you quick before I move to the others on the fundamental question that has been asked, and that we are committed as a country to reduce and get to a net zero by 2070. The energy sector alone accounted for over a third. So that's 35.6% of total Ghana's emissions between 1990 and 2016. The question is whether, as a country, our contribution to emissions, as it was mentioned by the gentleman from PURC, 0.2, is even worth it. Why we are pushing for so much transitioning, and why we are investing so much, and whether we can compare the benefits of what we intend to reap from all this investment as against the cost of it. Do you think that is worth it, pushing for this? I'm starting with you, and I'm going to ask almost everybody, because all of us seated here either are small businesses, small green businesses. These fundamental questions has run around us for a long time, and maybe we all have to convince PRC. Starting with you, Dr. Subadi.
I think whether we like it or not, we have to transition. Because if you produce this water using clean energy source, and you use maybe brown energy source, a time will come whether you will not be able to export this your products to a country that does not allow products from a brown energy source. So if you don't have a market for it, you will just die off. Last, I was in the office when business people came that they wanted green aluminium. All they want is vehicle to connect directly to Akusumbu.
Good.
So that the energy source they are using is renewable. So now it is green. So that is where we are shifting to.
Yeah.
So if we don't transform to make sure that our energy source is green,
we are threatened.
We are threatened for the international trading.
Okay.
But we also have to make sure that we do it, for lack of better, wisely. We have discovered oil. Other African countries have discovered oil. There are technologies where we can sustainably extract this oil. For example, carbon capture technology. What we see is that most people are pushing us to forget about these hydrocarbons and go with the modern areas. But there are technologies that can make us also have access to these hydrocarbons without polluting. And for me, that is what I think that we should promote. That if we want money to transition, we should also be able to use our resources, but find technologies that will be able to take them out and utilize them sustainably without polluting. Else, we will always be borrowing money, we will be indebted, and we will be transitioning as a poor country.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Good. UPSA Law School.
Thank you very much, and wonderful presentation, Doc. And I do agree with you to an extent. In fact, we are in June, so I would say at the end of May, we had this discussion with the energy, should I say, policy makers at the European level. And they do agree with us that Africa, we will transition. There's no doubt. Okay, for the energy transition, it's a global agenda. We are going to do so. But at our own pace. And that is why, for me, I'm a serious advocate when it comes to the just energy transition, because that is where we fit in. Meaning, look, let's not forget, all the developed countries relied on their fossil fuel to develop. And then, at a point in time, because there's a lot of propaganda going around, you know that. At a point in time, they come back and say, well, either because they've run out of it or, let's all move towards renewables. What happens to us, just like you rightly said, most African countries have the fossil fuel. So we are going to transition, but at our own pace, in a way that we are not going to adversely affect the consumer, the final consumer. Because what is the essence of transition? Because they are also suffering. Look, US, there's a report by their own, energy, how do you call it? Information Administration. A large, 10 million or so people cannot pay electricity bills. The same with EU. So the point is, look at us. If US and EU are suffering, how much us? So we definitely agree to the point of transitioning, but at our own pace. Okay, that's what I think. And then the other issue, there's been a lot of discussion. We have enough policy. So are we agreeing to maybe laws and regulations to ensure that we are complying? Because the fear is when there's a change of government, we throw away the other policy and then we move on. So are we agreeing to having regulations? I saw Doc with wonderful slides on, we have the carbon market. There's EPA has an office now. So developing our carbon market, are we going to have further regulations on our licensing rounds and permits, to inculcate this energy transition at our own pace in a way that it will not affect us? I would give credit to PRC. So far, in terms of just transition, they are involving the consumer in terms of dispute resolution. So are we going to do that in the other sectors? When we are talking about electric vehicles, yes, it's going to generate a lot of jobs, maintenance and whatnot. So regulation, the same way. Role play, especially by the institutions. We have the transport, energy, everybody. So specific role play. That is what, are we agreeing to that? The role of digitalization, decentralization. I think a number of you raised the issue. I'm an independent person. I generate electricity. It goes back on the grid. Smart metering. Are we agreeing to proper regulation for that? That's my own piece.
All right. And on the bit of the pace, whether there's anything to lose if we have to do this by our own pace. Listening to Dr. Sugbaji, if businesses are already asking for a certain level of compliance, do we have the luxury of time to do things in our own pace? I would throw that across as well. Okay, I'll come back to you. Is there any response? Oh, sorry. Let me take this one because I haven't heard, that's a voice we haven't heard from, and this one as well. So you introduce yourself and then we can... Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. My name is...
And then I'll come back to you.
My name is Safo Dankwa from the Strategic Youth Network for Development. And as the name of the organization suggests, we are a voice for young people. In all of this conversation concerning energy transition, looking forward to transition in 2060, 2070, I see that it's quite a long time. If it's 2060, we are looking at 36 years from now. It's 2070, we are looking at 46 years from now. And so in this conversation, we can never neglect the involvement of young people, especially where we have to talk about technologies that we'll be using in energy transition, which I also really agree to. Because if we are going to transition at our own pace, then we need to develop our own homegrown solutions, one way or the other, to prevent all these importation and leading to a lot of debt in our economy. So I think that for our universities, for our educational institutions, it's very important that the involvement of young people to put themselves into projects that would definitely bring about projects that we can actually implement, involving them into building their own solar projects. If it's windmill, why not? Because if we look all around in our country, we have almost all the natural resources we can boast of. So why not, if talking about technologies to even mine them, why not make these things available to the young people? I don't know how it's going to be done, but if we have it here, then why not use what we have to ensure that by the time we get to 2060 or get into 2060, we are developing our own technologies and not still relying on the Western world, or else it is going to be the same story. We come back to sit here, talk about the same thing. Inflation is high. Macroeconomic problems are also at our necks, and the cycle will continue to go on and on. So I am saying that inclusion of young people in this conversation, especially in the educational institutions, is key. It's important. We cannot take them out of it. Thank you very much.
Good. I had a hand there, yes.
All right, I'm just looking at a curve of annual investments in clean energy versus fossil fuels, okay, from 2015 to 2023. This is something that we worked on at ASAP, and in 2015 we had investments in fossil. This is a global analysis, okay. So in 2015 we had fossil fuel investments higher than clean energy investments. But then we have something we call inflection, point of inflection, if you do the curves. So the inflection happened in 2016 when clean energy investments overtook fossil fuel investments. And it's been that way until 2023. We are having $1.77 trillion investment in clean energy vis-a-vis $1.05 trillion in fossil fuels. That's a difference of over $700 billion in favor of clean energy. So if you are saying you want to transition at your own pace, how fast is your pace? Are you going to wait for who, or who's going to wait for you? So you have to make sure that your pace is in line with the global pace.
The global pace.
Because we are in a globe. You don't produce for your own self. If you want to have good macroeconomic indicators like we spoke about, you need to export more, competitive. So that's to answer the question about at whose pace should we transition. And I think I also have, on the policy side of things, we say we want to have a national energy transition plan. I don't know how national this plan is. The national anthem is national. The national pledge is national. We all know it. We all own it. We have ownership over these things. But if you say national energy transition plan, how many people really own this? If I'm the Minister of Information, what's my role to play in a national energy transition plan? If I'm the Minister of Local Government, Minister of Health, if I'm the Chief Director of the Ministry of Health, what's my role to play in this national energy transition? So I think we need a higher level discussion where everybody is brought on board. We all know the roles we have to play.
More coordinated efforts.
Because that's what happens all the time, policy incoherence. So if we have this coherent strategy and everybody knows the role to play, schools know what they have to do, everybody knows what churches, mosques, everybody knows what they have to do, I think we can be good for it.
Okay.
And I think I have one more recommendation for IMANI, possibly. If we could even, I know there are officers in charge of implementing these strategies, but we as CSOs, can we also do what we do? Can we track the annual investments towards achieving these plans and frameworks? If we can actually track them annually and work with the officers in the ministries in charge of implementing these plans, then we could actually know how far or what's the pace we are transitioning as we are asking.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. There was a hand. Okay. Let me take the voice that I haven't heard first, and then I'll come to. And this is my last round. After that, I think we'll hear from Malaysia, maybe some foreign advice. And then, please.
My name is Priscilla. I'm from ASE, Africa Centre for Entrepreneurship and Youth Empowerment.
Good.
So it's also a youth empowerment organization. So I'd like to add to what he said in involving the youth in all of this. Now, it was mentioned here that it's difficult to get funding from international organizations because of maybe the processes are quite tedious. But these international organizations also have projects and programs for youth involving in for the youth involving in greenhouse projects, involving in different projects concerning climate change. We have places from, projects like Women in Sustainability Africa, Baobab, and they have all these programs that tries to empower the youth, that tries to give funding. The funding might not be as much as $500 billion like what we are looking at over here. It could be just $1 million, but this funding help improve the youth and help try promote sustainability, help try promote climate change. Some weeks back, there was a science fair at the Ghana International School, and when you go there, you have people as young as 18, 17, and they have projects that are in line with promoting greenhouse and promoting stuff or promoting renewable energy. So I think involving the youth is very, very important and very key. As he said, from 46 to 36 years from now, 2070, 2050, majority of us over here will not be in the same position, but will be filled with the youth. So I think it's very vital and very important to involve the youth in this type of projects. Thank you.
Good. Thank you. So sources of funding for green SMEs, starting with the young people, going back to the school. I think it was mentioned, even in the curricula, how are we featuring all of this? PRC. And we do this very quickly. I think we all have like 30, 45 seconds.
Yeah, quick one. This
Please.
one is short. On the go green or lose your contracts, I feel like, it's a strategy that they are trying to use, or the Western world tries to use to actually force you to go green. Also, with the issue of the inflation line, where you saw, if you would notice, if you say an inflation line, then meaning that it was going up that way, then it goes this way a little bit, then it goes up again. If I'm getting my economics right. So it means that at a certain stage, they got to their limit where they can actually get to, then we had to join somewhere. Also, in Ghana here, crude oil production from our wells is mostly somewhere around 48 million barrels, around there about. How much of that do we consume?
Okay.
In Ghana here? I had the advantage to talk to some few people in Tanzania, and they were raising an issue of coal. They don't use coal. They don't really use coal, or they hardly use coal, but they are exporting coal. The Western world is saying that we should stop using coal because the emissions from coal is not good, it's not clean energy, so we should stop it. They are saying crude oil, we should stop it. So where is the coal going to?
Okay.
Where is the crude oil going to?
All right.
Why don't we use, you said the pace, so that's where the pace comes in. What are we doing? In the pace, we can actually take time and use these resources that we have to actually industrialize and get to their level where our macroeconomic conditions will be okay because we are producing our own things and we are exporting and our financial situation is okay. I can actually sit here and say that I have 10,000 Ghana cedis. I don't need to convert it to exchange rate. And hence, when I convert it to exchange rate, it becomes very small that I can't afford to buy an e-vehicle. And hence, I have to go for an accident car from outside and ship it, pay exchange rate of something and before it gets...
PRC, I think there are a few other people who want to convince you. Let me hear from them quickly. Nana?
Our brother from PRC, right?
After you, Nana, I think there's a gentleman I haven't heard his voice this morning. So.
Don't mind the white men, don't mind the Europeans. Okay, just relax. But you see, this is not the first transition we are seeing. Energy transition will come naturally. In fact, Adam and Eve saw wind and solar energy. Moses, the burning bush, at that dry place, peat, a lesser version of coal, blended with a hot weather, created fire. Before our grandfathers were taken as slaves and got there, they were electric cars. Oil had been experienced before the electric cars. Okay. Then came natural gas. Today we are talking about wind and solar again. Times change.
Okay.
and when they change, begin to adopt? Why will I move away from the grid to solar as a consumer? Availability and price.
Yeah.
How much has ECG to distribute today?
People are buying hybrid cars. The gentleman at the back, please.
So, well spoken. My name is Atua Inewedeseb. Well spoken, and using your own example with Tanzania and co, you are right. And it's the same with Mozambique. But the question is, the Western world is changing. What if they wake up one day and they say coal is forbidden? Where would they sell their coal? They lose all those revenue coming in. So that's the whole issue. You have your market out there and they are changing and you say you wouldn't change. What would you do when they change? Where would you get what would be the replacement for all those revenue sources? That's the question. Where are you going to replace all those revenue? If they stop using coal now, which they are doing,
Okay.
gradually. Thank you.
Good. So, yes, sir. The gentleman here. Quickly, and I think that should be the last thereabout.
Thank you for this opportunity. My name is Francois Saki from CASA Initiative Ghana. So, I was just talking to my brother here. If Europe and America, they are going at a very fast pace on energy transition and just transition. And Africa, we are saying we want to transition at our own pace. Can't we strengthen some of our African policies like the AFTA? So we trade amongst ourselves. So if I have coal or something that I want to use, and Tanzania needs it, and Tanzania can't export to US because US is banning it. Trade to Nigeria, they need it. Trade to Togo, they need it. So we can mobilize and generate the monies amongst African countries. There, Europe will see that, oh, Africa, if we don't go to them, if we don't export to them and they don't give us the money, they'll see that, oh, Africa is serious on this, so let's support or let's do something. So I'm suggesting that we should strengthen our African policy, especially like the AFTA that we have.
Regarding trade.
Yes.
So just last year, the batteries were brought from Kenya to Ghana, and Kenyans are looking to have lithium coming from Ghana to Kenya.
Exactly.
Then to make a lot more batteries and bring the batteries back down. So these are some of the things that are going on.
Yes.
Malaysia, can we take something from you?
Thank you for giving me the floor. It's very interesting.
Sorry, just to push. Can I have your full name? It looks like PRC. You may also help us with your full name. People didn't get your names
I'm
initially.
sorry.
Please.
Allow me to introduce.
Yes.
I'm Said Nauzer.
Yeah.
I'm the Charge of the Affairs of the High Commission of Malaysia. I've been listening to very interesting comments from the floors in this event. So what I can share is what Malaysia's directions also towards these energy transitions. The comments that are concerning the tax incentive and tax relief, on the electrical vehicles producers in Malaysia, they are given a variety of tax incentives which include tax exemptions for imports, excise, duties and sales. And further, the consumers can also claim tax relief for owning an electric vehicles.
Good.
So the government of Malaysia hopes by introducing these tax incentives, it will attract more EV producers to establish their manufacturing hub in Malaysia, especially.
Good.
And this is somehow will intend to develop the domestic EV assembly industries.
Good.
I also like to comment on the green initiatives that the hydrogen's energies, which is coming up. Yeah, I think that is also another areas that we should be prepared because I know this energy, the transition is very fast and very immense. So for a country to be ready for this new source of energy, it is very immense and very important. I believe that we have to ensure about the delicate balance of energy trilemma, or that is first the energy security that we need to place on, The second is the accessibility to access to the energy. And the third, of course, the environmental sustainability. So these are my comments.
All right. I have run out of time. I didn't want to, but because you are pleading, just do this in 10 seconds. I'm getting wild waves from the back, please. Otherwise, we'll take it from your lunchtime.
I'm happy our brother has mentioned this tax relief and other things. Yes, over the years, people have been coming, organizations have been coming for tax relief and other things, including the tax holidays that you enjoy. But unfortunately, when they come within the operational threshold, maybe if they are given 5 years, 10 years, before it elapses, then they metamorphose to a different thing, different name, and then come to enjoy the same tax holiday. So that is what we want to let you be aware, that we are aware of that. Because the tax holiday, the tax incentives have been given out, but people are abusing them.
Okay. I know. I've now realized that there are a lot of hands for questions, but it doesn't look like we'll be able to do that. I'm going to have Theo have Dr. Champon have the last comment, and then I will ask my last question, which I'll just need answers by show of hands, and then we can all go for lunch. We only have just about 10 minutes, 15 minutes for lunch. So, and we want all of you to have lunch. Otherwise, we'll chase you with the lunch. So, Doc.
No, it was just to thank you all very much. I think we both agree it's been a stimulating discussion, isn't it? And a lot of the comments you've shared would be reflected in the final report, and that would be circulated. We'll also circulate the presentation deck as well with you. But we hope this is the series or one of many conversations that we'll be having in the weeks and the months to come. So please, when we call you, we want to still see you here. So in the next session, hopefully, we'll even go deeper on the bankability issues, and try and unpack it a little bit more. But thank you all very much for sharing your fantastic insights on this. But we won't let you go until we take the poll.
And is the energy transition in Ghana worth it? That is considering the cost and potential benefit. By hands, if you think this is yes.
Is it worth it? Yes.
Is it worth it?
Can we get someone to count for us, please?
Oh, I can see. I mean, it looks like we're getting... So I can point those who are not... Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29. I won't waste time to count those who...
Oh, no. Let's do the no. Let's
we should still do the no. Okay, the no's. Because I realize some people are indifferent.
Yes.
No is 1. PRC, no or yes? If you had said yes or indifferent, I'll be shocked. Any other? So 2 no's so far.
Right.
Those who are indifferent. If you are indifferent, raise your hands. Because I saw faces. Those who didn't raise their hand for yes. If you are indifferent. Oh, no, I still have options. Yes or no or indifferent. Indifferent. Okay. So only 1 no, 2 indifferent. That's it?
One.
Doc.
No, second one. Should we do it?
At our own pace.
Yes.
Or we should go with a global pace. At our own pace, raise your hand. It looks like, okay, good. So that's it. Doc, I think we should count that. You want to count that? Hey.
Yes, I'll reflect it in the report.
Josephine and Carol are on my neck for time.
We are closing, we are done. At our
own pace, please raise your hands.
So
they need this scientific poll. Start here. 1, 2, so 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Doc, yourself? 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 6, 27. Okay. At our own pace, I see. People will go and leave us. So. Okay, so on that note, once you have answered all my questions, it's been a very wonderful morning looking at public finance from national and international sources, how we help Ghana's transition. Which sources? We talked about how can private finance from national and international sources also help Ghana's transition. And we talked about the collaborations that we can engage in. How do we ensure that these sources do not add to existing debt vulnerabilities? We have been able to highlight some of them. What is left, I'm sure that we'll engage in another session. But let me say, though, that we're all getting our lunch and come back to our seats. We can still be engaging whilst we enjoy. I saw that some of the small businesses wanted to ask you, Malaysia, something regarding incentives when it comes to small businesses. So we'll be available, grab lunch, back to the table. We can even use microphones and continue. Thank you very much. Lunch is served at